Okay, I want to talk just a little bit about something that is much talked about, and it's as much misunderstood as it's talked about. And that is the role of the hands in the baseball swing. Of course, you're going to hear the hands as a frame of reference from Little League to Big League, fields and players all over, coaches all over. And the problem with this is talking about the hands has no real explanatory power, as I've said about the hands and other cues, because when we talk about the hands in the context of baseball swing, 99% of the time it's some type of cue. So for instance, somebody will talk about, wow, this hitter has really fast hands, or he's got really quick hands, or he really knows how to use his hands. Well, the problem with that is when you think about from a functional anatomy standpoint what the hands can do, they can do one thing and one thing only, and that is to grip the bat. That's the only thing the hands can do, is grip the bat. If I let the bat go, then the role of the hands then, it's not being applied. I'm going to open my hands and drop the bat. So the point is, though you hear this a lot, and you may hear it from great hitters. In fact, Barry Bonds, as an example, talks about the power of his top hand. Okay? And again, the problem with that is the hands can only grip the bat. If I want to move the bat, I'm going to have to move other body parts. So to cite, as I've cited many times, a quote from Mel Siff. Mel Siff was a tremendous sports scientist, arguably the smartest sports scientist in many ways over the last 50 years. Unfortunately, died a few years ago prematurely. But Mel has a quote in one of his books saying basically that if even reaching for a cup of coffee, the simple act of reaching for a cup of coffee, it takes about six or seven joints and 27 muscles are involved. And of course, not including the appendages of the hand. So we're not talking about the hand doing anything. Simply put, if I reach for a cup of coffee, something else is moving the hand to get to the cup of coffee. Elbow joint, the three, or sometimes referred to as four joint area of the shoulder scapular area, depending on where I'm reaching. Let's say I'm just reaching straight away, even some muscles in this area. The bottom line is the hands are not guiding themselves. The hands don't have a brain. They can't direct the body in any manner. And no matter basically what we're talking about, unless it's something like playing piano, guitar, where obviously finger control becomes vital in that kind of context. But not here. When you're swinging a bat, you're holding onto the bat with your hands, and then you're moving other body parts to move the hands. So if somebody says, wow, he's really got fast hands, from my vantage point, that simply begs the question of, okay, well, how are his hands, why are his hands faster than this guy or this guy? What's making his hands fast? Let's just stay with the concept of fast hands. It has nothing to do per se with the hands. Now, in the context of thinking about basic functional anatomy, the wrist and the hand are two different things. This is, if you look at textbook 101 about functional anatomy, they're going to talk about the wrist and the articulations. The wrist has technically 2 degrees of freedom. That means it has motion of flexion and extension. This kind of action here, or abduction, adduction, or sometimes radial deviation, ulnar deviation. So this kind of action here, so it can go here and go there. Well, that does become important in terms of swinging a bat. As I've talked about a number of times, let's say that I had at birth genetic congenital defect. I had fused wrist. I could not create any freedom within the wrist. So let's say if I was swinging a bat, this wrist can't help the barrel get around. In other words, I can't uncock my wrist. I can still hold on to the bat with my hands, but the swing would look something like this, where I would have to keep turning. In other words, the ability to get the bat out and around most certainly does have something to do with the wrist articulation. But in terms of the hands, no, the hands are gripping the bat, no matter if it's an 8-year-old or Barry Bonds. In this context, too, am I attacking Barry Bonds for talking about his top hand? Well, no, I'm not per se attacking him. I'm just simply pointing out that he may have the frame of reference as his backhand is powerful, but his hand is only gripping the bat. Something else is powerful that's driving this swing. And of course, I'm going to talk about that and have talked about it, to kind of jump ahead a little bit. Basically, what Barry Bonds and all good hitters are doing is they know how to rotate the trunk really well. They know how to align body parts really well. And that's what's really driving, that's what's underlying what they're actually doing. To the extent that Barry Bonds swung as he did, tremendous hitter, tremendous efficiency of movement, certainly it is arguably the case that he can talk about his dominant top hand, powerful top hand, quick hands. Guys at the elite level can use any frame of reference they want to. They know how to use their body really well to create a very good swing. So in terms of cues, fast hands, quick hands, fine. If you know how to swing the bat really well, it doesn't really matter how you think about it. But from a teaching standpoint, with dealing with non-elite hitters, as most hitting instructors are dealing with on a regular basis, hand references are, as I said, they have no explanatory power. They just simply beg the question of, okay, why is this guy's hands fast versus slow? Again, just using that frame of reference, let's assume fast hands is important. One guy may be quicker with his hands because one guy doesn't have bat drag and another hitter does have bat drag. So what appears to be slow-moving hands is actually being caused by this back arm externally rotating like this, let's say, just to use an example of a flawed movement that's causing the problem. The hands are not causing the problem because the hands cannot cause the problem because they can only grip the bat. So I just wanted to throw this out here for people to kind of stop and consider. We hear lots of things on baseball fields, in terms of instruction. Most of these things are cues. In other words, they're not descriptions of reality. And to the extent that they're, not harmful, let's say, to the extent they're not harmful, it's the reason why they're not going to be harmful is because if somebody knows how to swing the bat really well, again, it doesn't matter what frames of reference you're using, but for somebody who has flawed movement, as many non-elite hitters have, as an instructor, you need to understand what's actually causing fast or slow hands, let's say, in this context. So, from my vantage point, what I teach, what I'm all about is what I refer to as kind of evidence-based or reality-based framework. I'm not going to talk about quick hands or slow hands. I'm going to describe describe the actual causes and the effects of those causes in terms of how you're moving your body, or how you are misaligning your body, or how you're creating poor posture. Those are the things that cause swings to break down. It has nothing to do with the hands. That's simply a fact, an empirical fact, a biomechanical fact that no one can really argue with. Sometimes people will make arguments in talking about the hands, they're actually talking about the wrist and the forearm, sometimes the entire arm. They're using the hands as a frame of reference of the entire arm. Well, from my vantage point, you shouldn't do that because, again, the hands can only grip the bat. Movements here throughout the body, and let's say in the arm, wrist, and so forth, as an instructor, it's going to be very helpful to kind of understand the articulations of body parts so you have a much clearer idea about what's going on in a swing, why it's breaking down, and you need to be able to understand, you know, some aspects of functional anatomy so you can help both explain to others and yourself as an instructor what's going on in these swings. Well, this, and this, and without having a cue reference of, well, your hands are not quick enough. Because again, that only begs the question of, okay, what's causing slow hands? Okay, so I just wanted to talk about that, talk about this somewhat briefly today, and probably a subject that I'll return to at some point.